أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم والصلاة والسلام على النبي الكريم صلى الله عليه وسلم وبعد. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. First of all, let me just, on behalf of the men and women, the young people and the elders of the Mosque of Islamic Brotherhood, let me just thank the Islamic Center here at NYU, Imam Talib Latif, and those brothers and sisters who work with him for putting this forum together and for inviting us. I'm going to try to move very quickly. And first, I want to go back to this question of, is race a social construct? Well, in America, it definitely is. And what's so interesting for me about that question is that no one would think of looking at South Africa during apartheid and asking, is race a social construct? But South African apartheid comes from American apartheid. American apartheid preceded South African apartheid. Now, I don't know how many in this room. I see a couple. I was born under American apartheid. I'm not from New York. I'm from Greensboro, North Carolina. And I lived under American apartheid. So all of this talk about race as a social construct, etc., this is not theoretical for me. And when you detect an edge on the voice of Imam Talib Abdur-Rashid, when you talk to him and when you hear him speak, or why isn't he a nicer guy like Imam Siraj? Who's my man, by the way. That's my man. But I'm from the segregated South. I ain't got time to play games. I know what I see, and I see what I know. And for a while, you know, trying to be like my boys. You know, hanging out with Imam Siraj and Imam Zaid, Imam Alameen, and other highly diplomatic people. For a while, I damped it down. I'm not damping it down anymore. Because I have a firm belief that the Muslim community in America generally, and in New York City in particular, is in denial when it comes to race. In America, race is inextricably bound with class. You can't talk about one without talking about the other. I just got off a plane yesterday. My mother and I went down to Greensboro, where I was born. And my mother reminded me when we were down there checking on my 92-year-old grandmother that we had moved to New York City when I was 8 years old. And I used to go back and forth between New York and North Carolina. This is before desegregation. This is in the late 50s and very early 60s. And she said to me that when I was about 11 or 12 years old, that one year she asked me, oh, do you want to go to the Thanksgiving Day Parade, she asked. Because the Thanksgiving Day Parade was a big thing in Greensboro, like it is here. And she said that I looked at her, and I said, no, I don't want to go. And she asked me, well, why not, son? You always, like that. You used to get very excited. And she said, I looked at her and I said, quote unquote, because I don't want to be around a bunch of prejudiced white people, unquote. This is 11 or 12 years old. When I went back to Greensboro in 1995, after not having been there for about 20 years, the first thing that I wanted to do was to go to all the places that had been segregated that I couldn't go to when I was a child. And I just wanted to walk. I told my father, take me to that movie theater, man. I want to pay my money and walk through the front door. You know, this is how scarring racism is. And I say again, and I'm going to go right to it, that my experience is that, you know, there's a pervasive ignorance on one hand and a denial on the other hand as to the impact and the pervasive impact of racism, personal or institutional or both, and how it impacts upon our lives as Muslims. We need to ask ourselves, how is it that in the 21st century in America, that people are still hanging nooses, burning crosses on people's lawns, scribbling racial epithets on doors, and people setting people's homes on fire? How is that? Now in the 21st century, why is it? Racism. Why is it that when Hurricane Katrina occurred, and we turned on our television sets, that what we saw actually looked like we were looking at like a third world country, in the richest country in the world? Answer, racism. Why is it that African Americans are 12% of the population of the American people? And in the middle, in the high 30 to middle 40% of the prison population. And if you were to leave right out this door and go just slightly south down the Center Street and stand at the back of Manhattan Criminal Court early in the morning, you would see primarily young African-American men being taken off of wagons that just came from Rikers Island. And they are shackled the same way that the slaves were shackled during slavery time. Same exact way. Same exact way. Why is that? How is that possible in the 21st century is racism? And then what about the Muslims? You know, 2/3 of the Muslims in America are immigrants. But that wasn't the case before 1965. In 1965, the Civil Rights Act of 1965 caused a tremendous change in the immigration laws. And study the history. Muslims started coming to America in the greatest instance of reverse migration, people leaving Muslim countries, coming to America in history. Never happened like that before. But those laws were changed because of the struggle of black people in America for freedom, justice, and equality. And black people were and are the litmus test for freedom, justice, and equality in America. How is it that even though this large Muslim group in America came into being as the result of this, and all of the immigrant Muslim organizations constantly talk about El-Hajj Malik, El-Shabazz, Rahmatullah Alayhi, and constantly talk about Dr. King and what great men these were and how influenced they are by them, etc. Yet no major immigrant Muslim organization in America has ever had an African-American male in any position of leadership other than a token position. And I might add, very few tokens. And definitely no African-American women.